Okay, I'm sitting here amongst all of my pepper plants, and these are the indoor plants that I got going for now. I have a few others, like some basil, oregano. I just started some cucumbers, but the peppers I think will be a good prop to use to kind of show you guys and explain some indoor growing tips and the struggles that you'll run into growing in pots and growing indoors. So before bringing you in and looking at these plants close up, I just want to talk about some of the basics. The most important things to remember when growing indoors are you've got to have a good potting mix. And if you want to know what a good potting mix is, I just made a video, my last video. I'll definitely put a link to it right here. So if you haven't watched the video on potting mix, be sure to visit that because you need a good potting mix to have success growing in the pot, growing indoors. I also made a video on why it's important to grow organically from a seed. There are people out there who will tell you that the plants don't know the difference. You can feed them synthetic fertilizers when they're young, and you can move them out in the garden. You can grow organically outside. And in the video, I explain why it's so important to grow organically from a seed. So if you haven't checked out that video, check it out. So the next important thing is light. You've got to have a good light source. And if you have natural light, if you can set your plants in front of a patio door or a window, or maybe you have a skylight, whatever you have, if you have an area where they're going to get some natural light, the plants are definitely going to benefit from that. If you don't, you better have some nice grow lights, and you don't need to spend a lot of money. You don't need to go crazy and make your own LED light like I did. The T5 fluorescent fixtures like this one right back here actually aren't too expensive. You can get them for around $150, and they cover a nice large area. And I know you might be thinking right now, $150? Well, this T5 fluorescent fixture came with 8 bulbs. It came fully loaded with the grow bulbs that you need. Now, the price of those 8 grow bulbs are $10 a piece, so $80. So I practically paid nothing for the fixture itself. I did buy a T5 fluorescent fixture from the Home Depot, just the fixture itself, for $80. And it's only a 4-bulb fixture. And I had to go out and buy the bulbs because it didn't come with bulbs. I spent more on that fixture thinking I could save money by going to the Home Depot and just purchasing a fixture, and I actually paid more money. So don't do that. You could just buy some compact fluorescents and sort of make your own little grow lamp or setup with some CFLs. It's going to cost you some time and money to set that up, but there are some good videos out there on how to do it. I actually did make a little video on a little compact fluorescent setup that I have actually underneath this grow table, because I typically would be growing plants underneath these tables down here as well. I'm not doing that at the moment because I have a baby that just loves to get into all the plants, and it's hard enough keeping him out of the citrus trees here. We've almost got him trained on that, but I will link to the video of how I did that, because it actually would kind of give you a good base for how you can do a little compact fluorescent system if you felt like doing so. I recommend the T5 fixtures. If you're going to grow indoors, you might as well do it right. These LED fixtures can be quite expensive. I do think that they're nice, but there are cheaper options, and even options that'll work better, in my opinion. So far we have a good potting mix and good light. Number 3, is going to be watering. Now, this can be the most tricky one. What I like to do for watering, obviously, when you first plant or repot a plant, you always want to make sure you water it in thoroughly. And you actually want to make sure you water it in thoroughly every time that you do water it. Because if you just kind of do a partial water, that can lead to other problems. If you just do what's called top watering, and you just water a little bit on the top, you don't let it fully dry out, and the bottom never dries out, and so you just add a little water here and there, your bottom is never going to dry out. It'll start rotting. So it's best to make sure to check that the pot is actually drying out. And one way that I like to do that is I just pick it up and I fill it. I feel the weight of it. And because my potting mixture contains a lot of peat moss and vermiculite, my potting mixture almost weighs nothing unless it's got water. So if I pick this up and it feels slightly heavier than a feather, I know there's water in it. And you get to know your plants as you pick them up, fill them when they're full of water, and then fill them a week later when there's almost no water in there, and you'll be able to tell the difference. Now, a lot of people will ask me what sort of a watering schedule I have, and my watering schedule is every couple days I check to see if any of these need water. Sometimes every day I'll just walk by and I'll pick them up, I'll fill them, I'll check the top of the soil, see how dry it is, but the most important thing is feeling the weight of that pot. And I'll do that every other day. Now, a watering schedule, does that mean I'm watering? No. Most of the time, if I'm just checking every other day, most of the time they don't need water. They need water when I feel the weight of that pot, and I can tell that there's hardly any water in that soil, in that medium. That's when I know that it's time to water. You do want to be careful with a lot of your plants and even peppers to make sure that they don't completely dry out for too long. Because if they happen to dry out and you let them go for a couple days, they could severely die back or just die completely. So you do want to be careful with that. You want to let them nearly dry out, but at the same time you want to make sure they don't completely dry out and stay dried out for too long. That's bad. I don't really have any good examples right now because I don't really have any plants, any pepper plants with yellow leaves, but I can always tell if I watered too much or if there's something else going on. Usually it's because maybe I watered too much or my soil medium didn't have enough aeration or enough drainage. Is the leaves will turn yellow, usually starting at the bottom, and they won't really go limp or they don't typically fall off too quickly. They'll just turn yellow, and they eventually will fall off. That's a good indication that I've watered too much, or it's getting root bound, or like I said, my soil medium was just holding too much water and didn't have enough aeration. If they don't get enough water, with the pepper plants especially, what will happen initially is the leaves are still green or whatever color that they were at the time, and the leaves will just literally start drooping. I mean, they'll just point straight down towards the ground. And that's a good indication that it's been dry probably for too long. It's time to water. Alright, so those are the three basic things. Now, I told you guys I grow organically. So my potting mix has plenty of food for seedlings. It's great for starting seeds, and it's great for growing your plants to 8 to 10 inches tall. Once my plants start to get bigger than that, or they've been in the potting mixture for 5-6 weeks, by that time I know that I'm going to need to do some fertilizing. So I want to talk about fertilizing, and again, organically. So this plant is slightly larger than what I would demo, but if you imagine a plant slightly smaller, maybe 2 or 3 inches smaller than this, I would look at that plant and I would be thinking it's about time to start fertilizing. And that's because in my potting mix, I use worm castings, and there are billions of microbes in those worm castings. And so my potting mix will contain billions of microbes. And the microbes need fed. If you don't want your microbes to die, the fertilizer is to feed the microbes. And yes, there are things in the potting mix, obviously, for the microbes to eat, but 5 or 6 weeks goes by and those microbes are going to need some more, in my opinion. So what I will do is I like to take a fish emulsion or a fish fertilizer, and I use 2 different kinds. Okay, so if you have an organic fertilizer that you like to use, by all means, but I like to use, this is a fish emulsion, and it's a 5-1-1, 5 nitrogen, 1 potassium, 1 phosphorus. And this is a 2-4-1. Okay, so this gives you more phosphorus, 2 nitrogen, 4 phosphorus, 1 potassium, which is what your container plants are really going to appreciate, that phosphorus. So I like to use both of these not only for the different nutrient concentrations, but because they're made differently. This fish emulsion is basically just ground up fish that is pasteurized. It is cooked. It's heated up and cooked to kill off any bad bacteria. And so you're just left with, pretty much just left with the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and whatever else happens to be in here. This one is fermented. So all the beneficial enzymes and microbes and everything that goes along with fermentation and everything, those beneficials are in here. You know, you got your vitamins and so forth. So I like to use, what I'll do is when I'm watering once a week, if the plant again has been in its potting mixture for 5-6 weeks and it's starting to get big and it's time to fertilize, I will start to put just a couple drops of each of these in the water as I'm watering. So I'll use a watering container like this. You know, if you like to use a larger container, you can add more. But I literally just use maybe a 1/4 teaspoon of each of these fish fertilizers in here. So 1/2 teaspoon altogether. And I won't necessarily fertilize every week, but pretty close to that. Sometimes I'll go a couple weeks, and if I start to notice any unexplained yellowing of leaves, and you know, I don't suspect that I've over or underwatered, and you know, it looks like there might be some nutrient deficiencies going on and whatnot, I'll be sure to use the fertilizer. It has given me great results. So now let's bring you guys in and show you the plants. So one of the other indoor grow tips I'll give you guys is pruning, especially with your peppers. You can see I've pruned it. I've given the stem time enough to thicken up. And this one's definitely probably ready to be potted up into a larger pot. Now you can see here on this pepper, I did recently water it, and they'll do that a lot of times when you give them a good soaking, is you'll get the leaf curl, and underneath you'll get like some spots. That's pepper leaf edema. Don't stress about that. A lot of your young, smaller peppers will get it. Very rarely does it happen to my mature peppers. This pepper is in the process of a transition as well. I did recently water it, but I also recently potted it up in this larger pot. So within a week or two, this guy will really take off. I know the leaves kind of look funky right now and stuff, but that's nothing to worry about. Back here is a nice little habanero that didn't quite take off as quickly as the other habanero, which I'll show you here momentarily. So you can see some of these peppers are quite taller and larger, and I do extensively prune them. You know, if they start to get tall and gangly and I don't like it, you know, I'll prune them back, and they're fine. They will sprout all kinds of new branches. I mean, look at this one, just starting little branches everywhere. And oftentimes I will get rid of a lot of the stuff that grows to the inside where it's not going to get light to it. If you notice, I don't have a whole lot of leaves down at the bottom of my plants where light's not going to get to them. You'll notice your leaves at the bottom will start to turn yellow and not look so good. And a lot of times that's not because overwatering or underwatering, it's they're not getting any light down there. And so just remove them. Don't stress about it. You'll get nice growth on top. And when you move them outside, they will fill out nicely. Okay? So here, I'm using my exact same grow methods that I use for peppers and everything else on these cannabis plants. And these are grown legally. I live in Oregon, so this is legal. And you can see I've extensively been pruning them. And that's because well, for one, some pruning is required, especially along at the bottom again where leaves aren't going to get light. But I pruned them on the top recently because I juice. You know, I juice cucumbers, carrots, tomatoes, and I juice the cannabis. And I've had a few people judge me and tell me, oh, you're going to get high and blah, blah, blah. And I've tried explaining in other videos that no, raw cannabis does not get you high. No psychoactive effects. What do I get when I juice it? Lots of minerals. I get the CBDs. Okay, I get the THCA, not THC, THCA, which does not get you high. THC has been proven to kill cancer cells, and CBDs have been proven to increase cell communication, amongst other things. So a lot of benefits to juicing the cannabis. Here is a nice tall, I believe this is a banana pepper, and the back is very green, doing great. And again, you'll look at it, you'll notice not a whole lot of leaves at the bottom where I don't need them. Okay, some of my plants, I have been doing flower control where I try to get all the flowers. But guys, these pepper plants have just been going crazy, and some of them are fruiting in here. Typically, especially if it's a small plant, I'll definitely get rid of the flowers. Like this habanero plant back here, you know, I definitely want to make sure I get all the flowers off of that. You can see that I have extensively pruned this pepper, was just getting tall and gangly, and cut it back. You can cut it back, it'll grow back. Back here, this one is getting quite tall, but also not only is it tall, it's big and healthy, and has a nice canopy. So I didn't really feel the need to do a lot of pruning on that. It's doing very well. Now this is the habanero. Again, I told you the habaneros were planted at the same time, but look at the wide. This is what you want. You want low center of gravity, nice big canopy, especially when you're growing indoors. You want them to be spread out so they can get as much light as they can. Of course, this is a light hog. If you have limited space, you you may not want one plant taking up so much space. But look what we got. Again, I've been doing flower control on a lot of the peppers, but this habanero got really a good size, and I thought, I'll let the flowers go on it. And I've got a nice size habanero pepper. I'm really excited. That's my first habanero pepper. I've been reluctant to grow these because I didn't want to grow anything that would burn my face off. But I'm going to make some more pepper jelly this year. If you didn't see the cayenne pepper jelly, I made a video on that, and that turned out awesome. So those are the plants and how they're doing. I really am happy with how my indoor plants are doing this year. I've learned a lot about taking care of them. Don't be stressed if you get the pepper leaf edema. This plant is going to bounce back and do just fine, especially when I get around to potting it up in a larger pot. This is a very healthy plant. So a lot of times pepper plants, when you start them and they're young, they can struggle a little bit and you can have problems. Just do the best you can with the basic things that we talked about. Make sure your soil medium is right. Make sure you're getting them light, and make sure that they're getting the proper amount of water. And if you do those things and you just watch your plants and you take care of them, they may struggle at first, but one thing that I noticed is once my pepper plants got to a certain size, they just really, all the work and effort that I did just really paid off, and they really took off, and they really started doing good. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that I was able to give you some tips that help you out. If you can think of any other indoor tips, please put a comment down below regarding your indoor growing tip or growing in container tip, whatever you want to put in the comment section. As always, I want to encourage you guys to grow organic and eat organic so you can be organic.